Good day, my fellow Americans and good people of the world. My name is Cassandra, and today I would like to address you in regards to my vision for the future of America. So I would like to share with you the constructs that I like to use when I am building a instrumental device. I like to build things, and usually I like to build tangible things with my hands. I spent most of my life being a carpenter, building things with my hands, and it's really humbling work, but it also is very enlightening in terms of understanding how to build a thing that lasts and does a proper intended use and is functional and beautiful and serves its purpose in a way that is integrity bound and that it can be relied upon. And so I like to build things in the abstract realm as well. I like creating digital architectures. I refer to them as toys because it's like having an idea that you can play with and you can do different things with, and you try different configurations and then you get different outcomes from it. But the concept is still baseline, fundamental, simple, basic rules that I use when building something that's substantial and that's significant. And so I put that same construct into a framework for envisioning how I might be able to help America actualize what I believe would be its best version. And in my opinion, and America would be fortunate and blessed, and it would be a nation that really is a place that people would be proud to call home if we could be a nation of welfaring stewards, which means that we steward our home. And our home, not just, the place that we live and that we dwell, but also our communities and neighborhoods, our state, our nation as a whole, and also our place in the world, our fellow neighbors, neighboring nations, and then the world at large. And I made this pact of sorts with myself and Mother Earth once. And I've always taken it deeply to heart. It's like, to me, it was like this blessed covenant that I made with the good Mother Earth, that I would find a way to help bring humanity back into a sense of being at one with the world. Like we are the world, we are part of it, and that it is our blessed and sacred duty to do all that we can to help to preserve, protect, and defend our home. And over the years, I've been really working hard to try to figure out how to uphold that promise in the most genuine and authentic way that aligns with my sense of what's right, what's fair, what's just, what's reasonable, but also in such a way that I thought would help to capture the minds and the hearts of other people, that they would want to become involved And I used to think that that was by bringing my work into alignment with this grand vision of helping humanity to become multiplanetary. Because that's big and that's adventurous and it's exciting, and the pioneering spirit of exploration is literally in my blood. Like, my cousin was the pilot of the very first shuttle mission, and so having that as kind of like this inspiration, like, wow, we can do incredible things when we put our minds to it as humans. Like, it wasn't that long ago when we weren't able to even get off the ground, and now look, we're going up into orbit and we're able to go around our planet and see it from a distance. And that overview effect, reading about astronauts coming back with this sense of like our planet is really just this very, wholly interconnected, very fragile thing. And that over the years we can see from, satellite images from space how humans have impacted the planet, shaped it and changed it based off of our industrialization and our development of what we call civilization. I thought that maybe, aspiring to go to space would be enough to get people to change their ways and start seeing the planet as being really important. Like, we have to foster a stable situation we can thrive on here so that we would have the means and the modes and the capacity to extend ourselves to space and potentially occupy other celestial bodies and get to know what amazing, incredible things are out there that we will only really truly understand if we leave what we know here in the cradle of civilization here on planet Earth. And I thought, like, to myself, I really want humanity to have that brilliant, amazing, fantastic future. Like, I'm not gonna live long enough to be able to go out among the stars to these incredible places and live in wholeness and thrivability on another planet as we do here on planet Earth right now. But that doesn't mean that that's not a potentiality in the future that we could actually set the pace for and align with a continuum to get us there. And imagine what we are gifting to our posterity for generations to come, this amazing, beautiful, fantastic future. Like, wouldn't that be great? And it would all be thanks to the fact that we decided it's worth it to do that and work towards that. And we all need to get together to make it happen by doing what's necessary now, by fostering, our safe home space here on planet Earth so that we can go there without destroying everything that we have here. Because it's going to take a lot of work to build up to eventually get to there. And who knows what incredible, exotic, amazing things that we would find out there that we'd be able to bring home here that would help us to live an even more incredible, amazing life. And it was such an inspiring future, and I was excited about it. I was so excited. I spent so much time building up, like, yes, we could do this and this, and and this is how we would be able to establish, actual settlements in these other places. This is how we would be able to work the systems on Earth to be able to have enough abundance so that we could do that justifiably and not piss everybody else off, in the planet in the process, or, disadvantaging anybody. How can we do it so that it's good thing for everybody? So we're all enthusiastically excited about it. I wanted it to be even more enthusiastically exciting than, JFK saying we choose to go to the moon in this decade and to do the other things, and not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Like, let's challenge ourselves, guys. And we did, and we went to the moon, and we did incredible things since then, and our space program has evolved and changed over time, and we've established new technologies. We've learned so much from space that has helped us to improve our health and well-being here on the planet. The technologies and the innovations that were created for going to space have been turned into commercialized products that have been changed into lifestyle convenience products and services that have helped us to live better lives and live in with more creature comforts and sensibilities, and helped us to absolve, useless and antiquated innovations and embrace new ones, and helped us to do right by our stewardship, what we owe to our planet, our home planet, Earth. But there's been a lot of bad things as well, and there's so much space junk. It is such a dangerous place, and the more that we do it the way that they're doing it, where it's just like, yeah, let's just send up a bunch of stuff constantly and let it break, let it crash back down to Earth and, dissolve in the atmosphere. Like, if it's going to cause harm, when is it going to cause harm, or how much? Probably so far in the future that I won't be around, so what do I care the consequences? There's a lot of bad things that are happening just from lack of care and concern. The people that try to advance going to space are doing it haphazardly and unconsciously and malevolently, in the sense of like, they know that it's going to cause harm to certain things, but it's all in the name of progress, right? And so they justify it, but they harm ecosystems, they destroy neighborhoods, and public gathering spaces are ruined, and space junk is everywhere, and it's enclosing us in so that we might not even actually be able to ever leave the planet, because there's going to be such a danger and risk to going out, and who knows how many satellites are just dead up there. And then plus the waste of resources. When you think about the life cycle of a satellite, they don't last very long. There's a lot of really important materials that go up there, and instead of collecting it and repurposing it, they just let it burn up in the atmosphere or just float around. And then NASA has to track every little tiny little fragment, because we put people up in this tin can up in outer space in the International Space Station, and have to constantly watch for potential debris that can come in. And I mean, just the tiniest little pea-sized rock could just rip right through that, and there's no air in space, so those people would be screwed. And so it's just like, you would think, for being rocket science, you're supposed to be so smart, you would think that they would be more conscious about the mess that they're making, that's creating a problem that they're going to later have to solve for, when they could just be conscious about it now and then prevent that problem from ever happening. That was a lot of the reason why I decided that I didn't want to pursue an alignment with the vision that was like, let's get everybody excited about going to space, and in that process we can do welfare and stewardship of our planet and achieve this beautiful alignment where it's a win-win situation all around. Because I realized it's not a win-win situation, because the space barons don't care about planet Earth. They don't care the harm that they're causing. They are perfectly fine with causing damage if it means they can make a little tiny bit of progress. They will let multiple rockets just blow up, blow up, blow up, because they look at it as, it's my money and I spent on these resources and it's whatever, instead of like, these are Earth planetary resources that really belong to everybody here. And while, yeah, the current economic system says if you have money, you can amass capital and then you can spend on whatever you want, you're really taking away from future generations for you to break shit. You're ruining perfectly good things for an opportunity to advance something that you probably could have done a much better job at if you just would have done it right the first time. Sure, it would have been a little bit slower, but progress with the right temperament and the right patience is important, because then you don't miss the important things. And what good is any sense of technology if we lose our humanity, or our sense of respect for our planet, or a conscious resource, comfortable conservation of our resource. There's limits to everything, and when you run out of those things, what are you going to do? I mean, look what struggle we're in right now with the trade war, where China has decided that because the current leaders in America decided to be aggressive and rude and overbearing and demanding. They triggered this terrible trade war, and China responds with like, well, screw you. We're not going to give you any of the resources that we have spent many years connecting those resource chains coming to us. So you're going to be a little SOL because, we thought ahead about, the importance of stability in a globalization where instabilities happen all the time because of conflicts or whatever, conflicts including tariff wars. So America's really not in a very super smart place. And then a lot of the resources that are very precious and we waste them. Fresh, clean water gets ruined all of the time just to flush a toilet or to, clean out for a boring tunnels and, machinery and stuff. There's chemical waste going into clean water systems and ruining it. So to the point where we don't really have a whole lot of clean, safe, reliable drinking water in the United States. And so it's just like these people who are supposed to be such great innovators don't really think through their processes very well. And they end up causing a lot of destruction, unnecessary destruction, and ruining perfectly good things because they just are not reasonable about it. They're just like hard innovating, But that's why America came up with like, oh wow, when you dump toxic chemicals from a paint thing into the river, it pollutes waterway systems, it kills plant and marine life, and gets into food systems and then it ends up slowly poisoning people, and then poisons their drinking water for people, and kills off plant life, and then that screws with the air filtration and like all kinds of things. Like everything's interconnected in our ecological systems, and industry just wasn't, honestly, our industrial revolution wasn't very long ago, so we didn't really know what the full effects were. But then once we started to realize, oh wow, America's really getting unhealthy, like can't see because there's so much smog, people are getting sick, we should probably change this. And so with the Industrial Revolution, eventually we pushed ourselves and forced ourselves to do regulations on industries to make sure that we could help keep our environment safe and keep ourselves healthy as people, keep animals healthy, because they're relevant stakeholders too, and we are all independent but interdependent with one another. And so those regulations came in and were supposed to help us to keep things in check so that we're not doing this wrong and we're not screwing ourselves down the line because we're overusing resources in this way, like precious metals and rare earth minerals and stuff going into luxury cars that only a few people would ever be able to drive, or cell phones that get thrown away with the next new iteration and whatnot. Like there's a lot of waste, and the waste is growth mentality is the reason why we have such a problem. Our economy is driven by waste, literally. But I want to change that. I don't want to go to space anymore because I think that it will take a very long time of doing things right, setting things right, and preventing bad actors with nefarious intent to use malevolent intelligences to cause harm intentionally so they can advance themselves for their own personal benefit or for the benefit of a very few, what I like to call the deviant echelon of society, which are the people who are not willing to be a part of the criterion echelon of society, which I consider that's the baseline standard. That's all of us. That's where we all belong. Criterion echelon, we all belong there. But there are people that are part of the deviant echelon, which are people who are in it for themselves. They're just very selfish, and it's all about what they can have. They're not willing to, help to make sure that this is a situation we can all thrive on. They're literally about their little pockets of thriving, and they're not interested in doing things in ways that are constrained and comfortably, doing comfortable conservation and just being reasonable, just, fair, reasonable, and right. They want to find ways to break down systems and stop regulations so they can unhinder themselves so they can make money. So they put money at the center of everything instead of people, which is the wrong thing to do. So I think it's going to take a long time before they finally come to the light and we can shrink down the deviant echelon and bring many of them into the criterion echelon of society where we're all working together towards the same similar cause. And I hope with having a good vision for the future will help to bring them into that situation we can thrive on together. With the hopes that one day, once we get our act together here and we're able to make America, a place worth defending and a place where, it works for everybody without the disadvantage of anybody so nobody gets left behind, that we can start putting ourselves in a position. It's like, all right, let's set up the next challenge. We've done this. We've, set ourselves up with stewardship. We're on a continuum of welfare and stewardship for all. These are the things we're working on constantly. And look at all the great outcomes come from, securing this situation for the criterion echelon of society. And now we can take risks for higher things. And then we can start doing the things that are necessary so we can build up a sustainable means to actually be able to go to space and do so reasonably without destroying Earth in the process of getting there. Because I'm not okay with that outcome. So I altered my vision and I put the concept of going to space so far off in the future that it's not even in the realm of possibilities anymore in my mind's eye, because it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of patience, a lot of time to do things right here on planet Earth before we would even be able to do things sustainably there. That's what I never really understood, is like, why go to space and just really hard press, let's go. If you're only going to go there and you're going to make so many mistakes that were avoidable, and people are going to die, and they literally say they're perfectly fine with that. I don't want anybody to die for the sake of advancing into space, but doing so in such a way that's not intelligent, We spent a lot of brilliant time and a lot of brilliant minds melded to figure out how to get, just a few people to go to space, to the moon, and land on the moon. There was so much work that was put into that. And we had, less technology than we even have today. We were able to accomplish that. But it's like, put your mind to work if, you want to do this right. And sure, you're going to have people that are willing, understand there's risks to everything. We've never done this before, so, there's uncertainty, but at least work on trying to limit the variables instead of, just... I don't understand how they can even think that it would be possible to go to space in any sort of sustainable or reasonable way unless they were willing to literally steal away from Earth and imprison people on Earth in a terrible situation so that you can justify taking away from Earth enough to make something potentially stick on another planet. It just doesn't make sense to me. Because you never know, what's going to happen. You might have to come back. But I also understand the argument of, you don't know what's going to happen. Maybe we need to go to another planet and have that backup or whatever. Okay, reasonable. But, right now there is no planet B. This is all that we have, so let's do what we can to secure this place. And then when people are free to take risks for higher things, because we've done a good job of securing the situation they can thrive on, everybody's not in stupid survival mode and desperation anymore. People can come up with the brilliant ideas of all right, things are on lockdown here on Earth. Things are going pretty good. How are we going to be able to, do this somewhere else? Is that possible? How would it be? And really consider it in a way that's intelligent. I just don't think it's intelligent or reasonable, just fair to try to do that without first securing our home here, planet Earth. So I decided to change my trajectory and just really focus solely and completely on welfaring stewardship, which is just to make sure that everybody gets to live a good life, that we are provisioning, we are accommodating, we are supporting, we are stewarding the criterion echelon of society, which is everybody that's in agreement that we are adopting an identity as welfaring stewards. We're going to work on stewarding ourselves, our homes, our neighborhoods and communities, our states, our nations, our neighbor states, the globe, and planet Earth at large, and take on the responsibility and take on the tasks that are necessary so that we can do it right and make sure that we make the world a better place, so all people can live the good life. And it's not disadvantaging anybody. So in the mechanisms that I like to create, I always start with the concept of intentions, degrees, and angles. And so I've set that into a little bit of a framework for how to achieve welfaring stewardship and to make that the archetype identity that we embed in the American identity. And it gives us, as the criterion echelon of society, something we can all wrap our heads around, all be in agreement with, like, that's who we are, that's what we're about, that's what we're gonna do, we're all in this together, you know, everybody do your part and what, you know, do what you can, how you can, all the ways you can, wherever you can. And be in agreement that we are not going to deviate from that because we've realized that that really is what it's going to take. It's the whole concept of, like, I can't, but we can. And if we commit ourselves to doing that, you know, there's nothing that's impossible to do. And for those that are a part of the deviant echelon, those who are moving themselves in a direction of selfishness and, you know, hoarding and mass control and, you know, manipulation, exploitation, these sorts of things. Again, hoping to be so compelling to them that they would be willing to let go of their selfish determination that this is the way it's got to be. Everybody forced them to go this way. It's like, we're welcoming you into this situation you can thrive on as well. And I'm hoping that it could become compelling. So I'm going to explain the intentions, which just kind of give the parameters of, like, this is how we help to contextualize what welfaring stewardship is going to look like and what it's going to be about here in America as we identify with it as Americans. So the three guiding contexts, intentions are the situational context, which is go forth and freedom go with you. The find context is I can't, but we can. So it's like, I find myself here and I know that I can't do this, but we can do this. And the historical context is all people are created equal and are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And in this, the most important consideration is the one element, the one important aspect that is like the through line continuum that carries us along. So we have our three intentions that hold us in place, and then the one point that keeps us on continuum, the concept that we consider or deem as progress. And that's, we progress through policy initiatives that keep us in the constant element of consideration, with the proposition that we're progressing along the line of an ever more healthy, sustainable, just, and peaceful world, and welfaring stewardship, and recognizing that we need not compete against all other political ideologies or government structures. We need merely to surpass them. And we do this by way of welfaring stewardship of people, of communities, of society, of civilization, doing so along the continuum of an imperishable world peace. And to me, the concept of world peace is really just provisioning the criterion echelon of society, get as many people to be part of the criterion echelon of society as possible, identifying as stewards, conducting welfare and stewardship together. And when we do that, we're living in a peaceful accord with one another. And though there's conflict of interest because there is going to be things that we're not going to agree on, that happens. But we use our governance to solve for the intractability of situations between conflicting sides, help us to reasonably identify what we're not understanding about those differences, and work out ways that are reasonable, just, fair, reasonable, right, considerate of all parties involved, in their best interest of all parties involved, and seeking peaceful outcomes for everybody. There's ways to approach this in a reasonable way. And when we're in that type of situation with one another, peace tends to be like the most natural state. Like, we don't have to, enforce peace. Peace is not an enforced thing. It's natural. It's in accord with our sensibilities of reasonableness. The only thing that has to be forced is when you have the deviant echelon trying to impose and force their will upon everybody. We have to have a counter force to defend against that. But again, that's not coming from a place of we're here to end you because you're the deviant echelon and you're a them and we are an us sort of thing. It's more just like, we understand there's going to be people that are not going to be all in 100% with this right away. Everybody has their own starting point. Eventually, we hope everybody will be involved in it, but there are going to be some people that it's to their own personal benefit and interest to be against it because they really want to hold on to this way of life that they've worked out that works for them. And the point is to just make sure that they can't use that position to harm other people, to try to break down the system that we're all agreeing upon. This is the standard that we've set for humanity. This is the way we want to be. We want an enduring, immutable truth that we live by. We want to have a reasonable means to say, like, this is a situation that we are accommodating for everybody, and we're all going to be able to thrive on that. And we're about making that, reinforcing that and enforcing that in a way that's making sure that nothing is going to come from outside and to take that away from us because of, want to prevent us from being in that type of unity with one another. So again, the concept is an imperishable world peace. And it's not just like, an optimistically naive notion. Like, I really do believe world peace is possible. I really do believe that the only thing that's between two conflicting sides is a misunderstanding. And that the best way to solve for that is to have corrective mechanisms, mediating opportunities, and appropriate dialogues and meaningful, intentional participation in building something together that helps you to better understand where things are going wrong in terms of your capacity to find common ground and see eye to eye. So I believe that most people want peace naturally, and they're naturally drawn to that. They don't have such a deep conflicting part within themselves that if given a welcoming situation they can thrive on, that they would completely walk away from those things that are just no longer serving their lives and fully embrace the things that are and naturally live in accordance with that in a peaceful way, because that's what feels good. If that's living the good life, that's what feels good, that's what feels right, it's going to be what's most natural, and they're going to align with it, and they're not going to intentionally fall out of that. They're going to stay and do the work that's necessary to stay in alignment with that. because it's what feels good, you know? And so the idea of having the intention to build something like that, we can really solve for a lot of the conflicts that we have in the world. Stewardship itself solves for a lot of the problems why we have, conflict, especially deeply internalized conflict. You see generational conflict from like past historical wrongs done to certain populations of people because of, how they dress, what they think, words they use, religious beliefs they have, whatever. Certain types of people have been categorized and then harmed be based off of those categories. And it's been a generational affliction, and it's really hard to let go of that because you're still constantly always in the process of that wound being reopened and never healed. It's hard to forgive when you're being still harmed. So the point of this is to help to do cooperatively at the same time the healing process, also solving for stopping the violence, and creating that safe space, and then welcoming the opportunity for all parties involved to come to a table in a reasonable way and say, there has to be an end to it at some point in time. And it would be better suited for all people if that end was one that could be built off of reconciliation and redemption and forgiveness, and nobody saying it has to be right away, right now, but that is what we're working towards. We're saying we know it's going to take time. It is a literal, legitimate grieving process that you have to go through in order for you to be able to be fully in acceptance for forgiveness. And forgiveness does not mean that what they did was okay, but just means that you are okay. And to create a situational context and a historical context and a fine context that helps us to perspective it in such a way and help us to perceive that and put ourselves in a position of like, okay, that's how I'm orienting myself to, that's how I'm relating to the idea of what happened and why we have this conflict and why we're trying to find a peaceful accord. And then advance propositions to say, well, what about this as an option? Can we find consensus anywhere on this ideal? And what do you have to say about that? And that's where we bring in the dialogue, where we can find a way to solve for that misunderstanding and move forward together. But I really think that you need to have this auxiliary construct that everybody can involve with that says, outside of all of those differences, right? Because we all are different. Outside of all those differences that tend to cause friction and then, could eventually, by whatever, compounding circumstances, lead to conflict. Outside of that, we can all mutually agree we're a part of the criterion echelon of society, right? And we all want to achieve welfare and stewardship because that helps us to maintain a continuum of an imperishable world peace, and that means that we're building that up over time. So if we're all agreeing we're a part of that criterion echelon in that auxiliary sense, okay, so we can put ourselves in a different position. Our perspective changes, our perceptions change, our propositions change too, because we're coming from a place of like criterion echelon, right? You don't want to be the deviant echelon in this regard. You want stewardship? You want an ever more healthy, sustainable, just, and peaceful world? Yeah, I do. Okay, all right, so we're going to be about that together. What do we have to do in order to build consensus in a way that helps us to put past, grievances aside and help us to heal those wounds and pains? So I think about it in terms of this concept that I like to call the Iron Maiden, which is like, I base it off of the concept of the band, not the machine, although it does kind of seem like it is like the torture device, but it's not for torture, it's for healing, trust me. The idea is like we have conflicting sides and they're brought together intentionally into this mechanization of how to achieve peace, how to find consensus by applying the right types of pressures in the right way at the right time, by letting the people who are in the conflict, with one another, be brought into a position of like, all of this will go away as soon as you have come to terms with this particular thing has to end. And as soon as that ends, the pressure releases in this way. And then as soon as this ends, the pressure releases in this way. And then you get more degrees of freedom. And you're more able to join in the full meridian of, positive benefits and gains and securities that everybody else in the criterion echelon of society naturally, get to experience. But when you're in this conflict with one another, you're inside that Iron Maiden, together until you work this out. You don't get to experience all of the benefits. And the whole point is you want to be able to experience all the benefits because it's good stuff, man. It's really good stuff. And so there's this incentive that draws everyone, to the table, into the situation, and to say, okay, well, we have to establish consensus on these matters. How can we approach it? What are we going to be about on these terms and conditions? And just find a way, instead of it being like, I need concession this and that and blah, 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 all these other things. It's like, sure, you're going to have to concede and you're going to have to make concessions and you're going to have to consent to certain things that may not be your ideal in the broadest sense, but you are trying to find the thing that helps both parties get back into the criterion echelon of society so that they don't become repeat offenders. And so you have to find ways to be able to do that together in such a way where it's, how can we reorient our historical context, see it a little bit differently, our fine context where we find ourselves now in the situation. Like, I can't do this alone. I can't get out of this Iron Maiden alone. I need you. We can do it. What do we have to do in order to achieve that? And if those types of appropriate, social and economic sanctioning is placed on people with the incentive that you get to be a part of the criterion echelon of society without any boundaries or barriers, once you break out of this system, which is completely and entirely up to you, whether that happens or not. But we're going to contain you within this, in an enforceable way, because we need to make sure that things don't get more out of hand than they are, because it not only harms you and the people of your, that are involved with you as well, but everybody else in the world suffers from it, because the more people we have in the criterion echelon of society, the better off that we're going to be. So the ideal is to get to that point. But that's an opportunity for us to be able to achieve an imperishable world peace if we all agree, okay, we're going to agree to, when we conflict, go into this situation with one another and work our problems out until we can both be free from that. And then go back into the situation of being a part of the criterion echelon and work out things reasonably. And then in this concept, we have corrective mechanisms that stop things before they turn into conflicts. Misunderstandings are going to happen, but it's best to catch them early and be like, whoa, 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 wait. And how best can we correct the situation before it goes too far? And that's a lot of what we need to do with one another in terms of problem solving in our relationship development and building, so that we can live in peaceful accord with one another. So the next concept in the structure that I'm talking about is embedding the welfaring archetype into the American identity. And it's the archetype role models the basic tenets of the preamble to the Constitution. So number one is time, which is form a more perfect union. We're in union with one another. We do the right thing at the right time, in the right way, for the right reasons. And we understand the difference between right and wrong. Manner, number two, manner. Establish justice. We are establishing justice by, sunsetting laws that are unnecessary or useless and antiquated, giving rise to new laws that we need that are relevant, befit the times. We are committing ourselves as a civil society to be in adherence to those laws, and understanding that our laws are universal and that they have to be applied just, fair, reasonable, right, and equally to all people, which brings it to another concept of something likened to the Iron Maiden concept. If we had a construct that helped us to publicly identify what is the parameters of where a law would be violated or broken or infringed upon, we would be able to use that as a corrective mechanism to establish a way to bring things back into peaceful accord. Get to the point where the violator stops violating, the victim is no longer victimized, and both are set on a path of healing and redemption and self-development so that they can proceed forward after what part of them had changed because their life has changed because of what happened, but to proceed forward in such a way that they are made whole. Both the violator and the victim have to be made whole so they can reintegrate back into society where they don't become repeat offenders. And they can grow as a person and become better. So we have to establish justice in such a way that you can't have, the laws work one way for people who have money and then work different for people that don't have money, because that happens a lot in society, and that's not justice. That is corruption. And so we have to be able to have the manner by which we establish justice. Number 3 is place. We ensure domestic tranquility. This is a place that is worth defending. It is a place that is a situation that people can thrive on. It's a place where domestic order is the natural cause for our life experiences. And it's what we're going to be about every day. We're in civic union with one another in a civil society, understanding domestic order, saying we know that there's laws and rules and we're bound by them and we're going to adhere to them. And when we violate them, we will accept, ownership and responsibility for it and face those consequences, and know that it's about redemption and about reconstituting ourselves back into alignment with laws. It's about discipline, not about punishment. We really need to change our justice system to really be about justice, which is about, again, corrective mechanisms, not, corporal punishment and pain and, eye for eye type thing. It's like the eye for eye should be like, I see, this is what we were doing wrong. This is where the misunderstanding happened. I see the error of my ways. I see the error of my ways. I understand now better where you're coming from, where I'm coming from, these sorts of things. You have to be able to have that type of baseline standard and do so in such a way where it's not offending a person further and further violating them when they're trying to seek corrective mechanisms to set something right that had gone wrong. Those are the things that we need to do for domestic tranquility. And also that's provisioning to make sure that everybody has what they need so they're not put in a desperate situation where they could easily be led to do the wrong thing. Number 4 is modes, which is provide for the common defense, which is not just about, making sure that we have a really strong and enduring military, but also we have good relationships with other nations. And then we also have, again, domestic tranquility. We don't have a reason to infight with one another. We get along because we live in accordance with, this is civic society. We have chosen to involve ourselves and to be inculcated with social and civic ideals that help us keep in accordance with the sense that this is how it's going to be in America. If we are going to, be American and live together, this is what we have to be about. And number 5 is methods. Support the general welfare and promote the general welfare. And the concept of that is everybody needs to be, have shelter, food, clean water and sanitation, need to be housed and fed, need to have safe space. And when I think about it, I think about the Sustainable Development Goals, we should be living in accordance to the alignment with that and the alignment with the planetary boundaries. And that is everything that we need in order for us to live in a state of welfaring. And then number 6 is ends, which is to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. And we do that by accomplishing the provisioning, accommodation, support, and stewardship of the criterion echelon of society. So now it's moving on to the 9 angles, and this helps to establish like how we distinguish the bounds and the boundaries for accomplishing, you know, our 6 basic tenets of the preamble to the Constitution. So number 1 is to dissolve extreme concentrations of power. And we do that by embedding the welfare and stewardship archetype into the United States of America's identity, so that we can be cooperative stewards and cooperatively work together to outcome engineer an imperishable world peace through a situation that people can thrive on, and so that we can all live the good life. Number 2 is to restore and enforce the dynamics of systemic stability and adaptability, which is progress the stewardship, welfare and stewardship mission to provision, accommodate, support, and steward the criterion echelon of society, expanding the potential to advance civilization on continuum of an imperishable world peace through welfare and stewardship. And number 3, liberate the dominance of the deviant echelon of society, or the self-serving class of society. This is done by delivering on the reputation of being a nation doing good work in service to alignment on a continuum of an imperishable world peace. Number 4, decentralize and simplify governance. Government sets goals, makes rules, and solves for the intractability of problems, and intervening on behalf of the individual to help to deliver on the tenets of the Constitution, and shifting implementation of solutions to the lowest level of governance, to the individual, community, and the local level. And this is to render America in the Earth planetary paradigm an ever more valuable place for us to align with and call home. Number 5 is to change the unit metric of productivity to the energy unit, which is aligned with the compensation metrics that ensures productivity of welfare and stewardship is the only thing that new money is created for, and to pay out with a fair compensation. This is to realize the tenets of the U.S. Constitution, so the USA works for everyone without the disadvantage of anyone, so that nobody gets left behind and everybody lives the good life. Basically saying that welfare and stewardship, achieving that should be our natural goal and how we orient ourselves. This is why we have an economy. It has a proper intended use, and this is what it's properly intended to accomplish. And that if you're not doing productivity that is investing in that, advancing that, working towards that, then you're part of the deviant echelon of society. And while you may be able to work your means to make money or to accumulate assets and whatnot, there's going to be limitations and bounds to what you can accomplish, because society is establishing rules that help to keep things in alignment with us achieving and securing the criterion echelon of society, because that's where we know we can all thrive. That is a situation we can all thrive on. Number 6 is productivity for welfare and stewardship. We're engineering outcomes of welfare and stewardship within the eudaimonian or welfaring city of cities. It's a template designed to adhere to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and maintain within the safe operating space of the planetary boundaries. Ultimately, it's concerned with the livability, habitability, and the beautification and the functional means for cities and towns to foster well-being and welfaring so that people may live the good life. And number 7, institutionalize rational self-sufficiency in all essentials. We need to build innovative infrastructures that keep people housed, safe, fed, entertained, educated, and engaged in social and civic encounters and immersed in a widely varied cultural atmosphere with social tolerance, inclusion, and domestic order. Number 8, maintaining coherent self-reliance and sovereignty aligned with welfaring outcomes. We need to establish a stockpiled stewardship of life-vital resources in a resource commons of our essentials for stability, security, and self-reliance. And number 9, internally consistent logical arrangement of parts that fit together well so as to maintain completeness with many supporting facts to establish a strategical, sensible, consistent relation of the parts that holds everything together. This is where we harness the vast potential of America as a sanctuary of coherence and dependability for welfare and stewardship, moving along a continuum of imperishable world peace. Now, not a lot of people are actually familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, so I'm going to frame them in terms of creating sustainable cities and communities, or what I like to call the city of cities. We're putting that at the core of what we do. Welfare and stewardship is essentially about making the city of cities template and building that out as a legitimate framework in every city center and every town throughout the nation, and then eventually throughout the world. And it accommodates provisions and supports and stewards people to help them to be able to live the good life. And that it's a basic template that can be kind of like modular in components and arranged as is necessary to accommodate the situational needs of every city and town, but put together in such a way where they can add their own identity, their own cultural identity, their own historical reference, and really preserve their sense of what makes that place special and distinguished, but universal in the sense of we have a universal template. It's like a universal basic innovation that we establish in every city and every town community to know that we have secured for the people that live there or travel there or visit there, they will be able to live the good life. And so we're working towards building that up. But in order to understand what type of outcomes, the welfare and stewardship outcomes that we're engineering for as we're building up the city of cities and the components that make the city of cities, because it's not just a thing, it's many things put together in a network effect. What they have to achieve in terms of outcome is the Sustainable Development Goals. And so I've arranged it into 4 coordinates for the different types of them. At the center is the concept of the sustainable cities and communities is one of the Sustainable Development Goals, and that's the one that's at the center. It's like the most important thing. All other Sustainable Development Goals are built around that in terms of the City of Cities framework. And then it's separated into 4 separate quadrants. The first one is the actionable quadrant. This is where we have number 1, decent work and economic growth. Number 2, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Number 3, affordable, clean energy. And number 4, clean water and sanitation. The next quadrant is basic. It's number 1, climate action, otherwise known as remaining within planetary boundaries. Number 2 is responsible consumption and production. Number 3 is life on land. Number 4 is life below water. And the third quadrant is critical, which is number 1, reduced inequalities. Number 2, good health and well-being. Number 3, quality education. Number 4, gender equality. Number 5, zero hunger. Number 6, no poverty. And then the fourth quadrant is dire, which is number 1, partnership for the goals, and number 2, peace, justice, and strong institutions. And by having these separated in this way, it helps us to orient within that. How do we align our accomplishments to make sure we're meeting each one of those roles? And every one of the numbers is set up actually in terms of relevancy for, we have to make this be the first thing that we approach. And once we've secured that to a certain specific degree, then we can add in the other components, and they're layered on top of each other. But the number 1 for each coordinate interrelates with the number 1 in every other coordinate. So, and number 2, same way. Number 3, same way. And the reason why is because they positively reinforce one another, but you do have to take into account it's, one of them's actionable, one of them's basic, the other one is critical, and then the other one's dire. And it's like, in terms of like, we really think of those words, what they mean, in a sense of like, one is taking action, the other one, this is the dire situation, this is what's super important, this is the most critical thing that we have to adhere to, and then the other one being just the basic, like, this just is what should be the standard, this is the way it should be. Then moving on to establish the 9 planetary boundaries, which are the guiding of civilization within safe operating space of Earth. Number 1 is climate change. Number 2 is atmospheric aerosol pollution. Number 3 is freshwater consumption. Number 4 is land systems change. Number 5 is biodiversity. Number 6 is chemical pollution. Number 7 is biochemical flows. And number 8 is ocean acidification. And finally, number 9 is ozone layer. And there is actually tangible frameworks, just like with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. There's many targets and different ways that they have found, the UN and their affiliates and people who have been working to accomplish the goals over the years have found for basic metrics to be able to say, this is what we can say we've actually achieved it, and this is what the outcome should be when it has been achieved. This is what we deem progress or success. The planetary boundaries are the same thing. There is actual tangible framework that has been established, true metrics, ways that this has been measured and viewed over time and quantified and qualified, and that gives us an idea of what we have to do in terms of walking back some of the tendencies of humanity, some of our ways of progressing right now and being industrialized. We have to shift some of that stuff to get ourselves back into the safe operating space. And we can use the Sustainable Development Goals to help us to achieve that. And if we're building innovations within, a universal basic innovation, which is a framework of building a city of cities that is accommodating people to live the good life in natural accordance with welfare and stewardship, we can achieve those outcomes naturally. So it's not having to force everybody into doing it, and it's not trying to expect people to do it on their own. And it's really involving everybody in the process, and like, we're all in this together, and this is what we're working towards. And we incentivize along the lines of achieving those sorts of things. And we're building those things out, componented over time, and then finding best practices and improving on iterations of technology so we can say, we can do it better the next time. If you give a basic innovation to somebody, and every city across the nation has this, and they're working with it in their own way, they can find best practices and be like, hey guys, our brilliant minds here in this city decided we were going to use it in this way, and guess what we came out with as a result? Man, it was amazing progress. You should really try considering doing this where you're from, because it might give you better results than what you're able to achieve now. And so when we get that type of unification, we can level up ourselves at life much faster than we can achieve right now. Then I want to talk about just briefly the concept that I said before about the Iron Maiden approach to justia and prudentia. It's basically creating a contractually binding situation for stakeholders to make sure that they do the right thing at the right time, the right way, for the right reasons. We're literally establishing justice by making a morally legitimate, integrity-bound, honorable reason, fair and right situation that people can go into and be positively and negatively sanctioned, so that we can reveal the truth, promote goodwill and good relations, and to make sure that we are getting at the best interest of all parties involved. It's looking at the concept that law is literally a corrective mechanism and legislation is meant to solve for the intractability of problems. So that's what we have to focus on in terms of establishing justice, which is law is how we even exist as a nation. And if we don't have true sense of justice, and for that justice to be equal, so everybody knows that everybody's bound by the law and everybody will be expected to adhere to and uphold the law, then we have an actual nation. If we don't, then things will fall apart because the system's not just, it's not fair, it's not reasonable, it's not right. Moving on to try to make this video not so long, I want to share my vision of the future and the good work that I've been working on. I want to establish civilization of an imperishable world peace by rendering an Earth planetary paradigm that is an ever more valuable place for people to align with, delivering on the reputation of the world peace brand, and which is welfaring stewardship, and which offers the shared life ways of tranquility, freedom, independence, personal excellence, and the fulfillment of the good life for all. This is a cooperative, omnidirectional, good outcome firm. It is a proper capitalism approach to establish to create an establishment upon which to build a reputation of good humanity and a situation that people can be welcomed into so that they can live the good life. The mission is to provision, accommodate, support, and steward the criterion echelon of civilization of an imperishable world peace. And the people, the welfaring stewards, are the responsible agents of this imperishable world peace. They are doing the good service to the world, working to outcome engineer the life ways of the good life, and serving one another to make a success of the good life. The good life, in this terms, is the Earth planetary paradigm works for everybody without the disadvantage of anybody, so nobody gets left behind. And in realizing this, with the concept of the city of cities and just building up these simple innovations that are interconnected together to help to create support systems so people can depend upon those sorts of things so they can live the good life, comes to the concept of the one small change. One small change can begin the process of profound shifts in the trajectory of progress, thus leading to different outcomes than can be expected if the status quo prevails. Utilizing the City of Cities model for world peace, welfaring stewards can take on the work to make small yet substantial and significant changes in their cities to align the life ways of those who are living within the cities with the outcomes that do good for them so they can live the good life. The City of Cities engineers and actualizes outcomes that align with the UN Sustainable Development Goals and does so within the planetary boundaries. Welfaring stewardship distinguishes the good work of provision, accommodate, support, and steward the criterion echelon of civilization. This is the standard reference point of elevating people to what is the good life. Contrasting that, of course, the good work of the criterion echelon of society from those that are the self-centered, deviant echelon of society, those which decide to depart from the accepted norm or standard of an ever more healthy, sustainable, just, and peaceful world in an imperishable world peace that we are working on together in a continuum of welfaring stewardship. So we're provisioning, accommodating, supporting, and stewarding, helping to make sure people just have the basic necessities for the good life. There's a resource commons for things that they need that are life vital resources. There's resource chains and distribution networks to make sure that everybody gets what they need when they need it. And that we help to establish for people the means to build for themselves safe home spaces. We need to have buildings that are not just a house, but a place people can make into a home, and where they can establish their own self-identity and their own self-sovereignty. And we need to use that as the family unit, and the safe home space is the best way to be able to bring out a sense of well-being, fostering for people. Because when your home space is safe and you're self-sovereign in that space, and you know, you are the one who's doing the self-governing there, and then you go out into the world, into your local space, knowing everybody is doing the same thing, we begin to be able to be more trustworthy of one another, and trusting of each other, because we understand that you have what you need, I have what I need. None of us are in a desperate situation, so I don't have to, you know, worry about not being able to anticipate what you're going to do, because, you know, chances are that you're in a reasonable accordance with the rest of us in terms of agreeing, like, this is really how society should work. This is civil society. And then working on community development so we can foster the good life for everybody, help to invite people into a situation they can thrive on, and then help people when they go astray to be welcomed back into the situation, you know, not through punishment where then it shames them and blames them and then actually oppresses them even more, but through discipline, to saying, like, you did the wrong thing and now we need to set things right. And these are the reasonable means that we have created in society for a viable path of redemption, so that you can be made whole and your victim can be made whole, so that we can all move on together without being burdened and weighed down by the terrible concepts of, you know, oftentimes it's just a mistake that people make, so that it doesn't get out of hand and then become a worse thing. You know, of course, also knowing there are some people that are just permanently choosing to be in the deviant echelon of society, and they don't want to be redeemed. And in that case, that's why we have the affirmative sanctioning of people to the point where we can prevent them from harming themselves or others. The next one is caregiving. Caregiving is so important. Like, measure the well-being of a society based off of how much we appreciate and value and foster caregiving at all levels. That's parenting. This is caregiving for those who are disabled or people who are elderly, like caregiving for, you know, caretaking for property and things like that. Like, it's caring about things and taking it upon yourself to have responsibility to make sure that whatever is necessary for that person to be accommodated for in the ways that they need accommodation and assistance and support, they get that in a way that's loving and nurturing and considerate of their needs and their wants and their limitations, and helping them to feel like, you know, they're not being left out or left behind, but they are being brought in, and we care enough to make sure that they have everything that they need so that they can be a part of the criterion echelon as well. They are at the standard as well. We understand they need a little bit more care and love, and we're willing to give it because it's what we've agreed upon. This is the criterion echelon. Everybody, nobody gets left behind. Everybody's included. Nobody's put at a disadvantage. The world literally works for everybody, and we work to make sure that that happens. So caregiving is super important, and we need to make sure that we're doing that in such a way that is reducing suffering, liberating struggle, and caring about the well-being of everybody, and compensating our caregivers. So the concept of having the city of cities is to make sure that we're bringing about the good life for all people, utilizing design, innovation, infrastructure, and development. We're designing livability, habitability, and beautification innovating functional means for life ways to be the default activity of daily living, so that people achieve the good life with support of convenient products and services. So the idea is to have a development of infrastructures that keep people housed, safe, fed, entertained, engaged with social and civic encounters, well informed, and educated on how to be of service, befit the needs of now, and be part of the living answer to the imperishable peace that we exist in and we work to be a part of. So in order to do this, we need to be able to reimagine and rebuild homes and neighborhoods and cityscapes to achieve eudaimonian or well-faring outcomes. This is going to require seamless integration of beautification and accessibility to accommodations, housing, needing to have naturescapes and worked into every environment, and more nature-based established local gardens, and then things that represent resiliency in homes. They're doing resiliency remodels to help to make houses more climate resilient, make them more curb appeal, and make the homes be part of a cohesive neighborhood so that they're part of their communities again. And in doing this, these are the type of projects that we have to take on to be able to build up these environments. So in terms of the proper capitalism, the actual type of economy that we will see ourselves shifting into, I don't see ourselves as being a manufacturing economy. We're definitely going to build things, but we're not going to build useless trinkety crap that we don't need, and we're not going to build a bunch of luxury crap that nobody can afford. We're going to build the things that actually matter, things that are going to secure our future, to help us to be able to live the good life, and to do so in such a way that is those universal basic innovations that can be built into cities to help to accommodate everybody living the good life, providing the means for us to establish services and lifestyle convenience products and services that help us to be able to live the good life. And essentially what this is talking about is creating a scaffolding for our lives. Our work is going to be about building up that scaffolding, and it's going to be about doing the good work to helping our neighbors to level them up at life. And there's so much work that needs to be done to achieve these sorts of things. We're no longer going to be mindless consumers just buying crap, and usually crap that's not built very well, so it breaks and then we just have to buy it again or whatever. We are literally defining ourselves as we are trying to get everybody in the criterion echelon to level up their life to that standard of living that is good. What do we need to accomplish to do that? Let's set ourselves out with certain projects to be able to get that accomplished, and get everybody involved in that. Incentivize, entrepreneurship towards helping to build, businesses around accomplishing that, and work into the economy getting those sorts of things done, and then helping to make sure that everybody has the means to actively participate and contribute to the establishment of that. We would have something also to outsource if we did this in America, because we could create, this template of the City of Cities framework and build up these universal basic innovations that can be componented together, and we can send them to other places like developing nations and whatnot, and help them to help their people level up at life so they can live the good life too. And think of how much good that would do for making the world a better place, but also at the same time achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, bringing everybody into alignment with the planetary boundaries, settling, conflicts and whatnot, because we're bringing everybody into the criterion echelon, and we're all getting along and involving ourselves with that situation. we can build up on those innovations and again reiterate the fact that like different iterations are going to help us to establish best practices and new orientations and new types of innovative approaches so that we can do it in the right way, because the point is to level up everybody at life, because there could be a day once we've done the right things for ourselves and each other that we could potentially make this fantastic future possible. It would be possible because we've made ourselves ready and able and stable and sufficiently provisioned in order to do so. So the scaffolding of our lives, having public houses and auxiliary dwelling units instead of trying to always build single family homes or multifamily complexes, we need to have new innovative approaches to giving people dwelling units that they can reside in to help them to fully integrate into society in a seamless way that doesn't make us have people living out on the streets or in tents and rough sleeping and stuff. Like, that shouldn't be a thing. And as soon as that's gone, imagine how beautiful and clean our cities could be, and then how wonderful it would be to know that there's people not living on the streets. I was just out the other day at the store, and I saw this man who was sitting on the curb, and he was holding up a sign that said, "Anything helps." And, I thought to myself, well, it's kind of cold tonight, and he looks really uncomfortable. And if I was in his shoes, man, I would really like some hot food right now. That sounds like it would be a good thing. Just thinking what I could do in the moment, given that I was on my way to go do things. I had my own life to live and all this, but I took some time to go and sit with him, and I introduced myself. His name was Jake, and he expressed to me that hot food would be amazing. And he was right outside of a store. He told me exactly what he wanted. And I was like, all right, I'll hook you up. And I went inside, I bought it for him, brought it back out, shared it with him, had a conversation with him. And for me, it was like I wanted to do more. But that's all that I could do at the time. And but I put him in my heart, in my prayer, and my thoughts, wished him well, and continued to think to myself, if we had a city of cities, he would not have any reason to be there. He wouldn't have to panhandle and hold a sign and ask for help. He wouldn't have to be sitting on the streets. He wouldn't be uncomfortable. He wouldn't be unkept. He could be safe and warm and in a shelter, in a space where his belongings didn't have to all fit into a backpack, and he could be happy and well, and then I wouldn't have had to see him on the street and then feel my heart and my compassion feel this like deep clench within my chest and of sadness that like I hate that this is the world that we live in, and I don't want to see anybody suffer. And I would have much rather been able to say, hey, we have the city of cities here, and we have these universal basic innovations, and let me tell you a little bit about them. If you go just right over here, you will find yourself a fitting dwelling space accommodation seamlessly integrated into our cityscape. It's welcoming, inviting space for you to go there and be safe and be well. And then I know he's okay. And I know that he's taken care of. He has the care that he needs. And that would be a situation from which he could thrive on. He could do more than what he would be able to accomplish just having a full belly for the night full of warm food that I was able to give to him. He could have gotten a true restful night's sleep, not having to worry about, getting kicked out of a space or being harassed by someone or harmed or having to deal with harsh elements outside. A place where he can put his stuff. He could stretch out and be comfortable and dignify himself, that's what I wished for him. And it was like, having the city of cities, he would have that. And he would never have to be in that situation ever again. And then I imagine him being creative. Like, he had a little sign. He was selling like these really cool little trinkets that he had to try to be able to make money. I gave him some cash. I didn't want to buy his wares. I didn't need them, but he was trying to be an entrepreneur. He was trying to make his way in there. It's like he wanted to. It's like, I didn't want to ask for help. I'm willing to do work to care for myself. It's just like, the problem is our economy doesn't make good and decent work, But in the city of cities, we could have that. There would be so many opportunities for Jake to have been able to, wake up the next day after having a good night rest in a safe space, gone out and done a couple task work to be able to accommodate, these projects that we need to do to help make sure everybody's living the good life here. He can go out and do some of those for the day, and then he would get more than enough, compensation for, fair compensation for his good work that he's done, that he'd be able to go out, afford his own food, and to be able to pay for his safe space, save up a little bit, make investments in some new clothes and other things that will help to add creature comforts to his life so he can help to live the good life. He doesn't need a hand up, a handout, or some impossible capitalistic chance at a big break. He needs opportunity of a fair shake. Speaking of that, I shook his hand. His hand was so cold and so rough and so calloused, and all I could think to myself, I held his hand for a while, just warming his hand up in my hand. And I was thinking to myself, like, I know what it's like to be in a situation where you have nothing. And I put myself in his shoes and just blessed him with love and thought to myself, he is full of so much potential. And just with welcoming into a situation, a safe space, a situation he could thrive on, he would thrive. He had everything he needed. He had a very polite demeanor about him. We had a nice conversation, and there's so many people that are like that are in those types of precarious situations, and it's like, it doesn't need to be that way. And then you see many people just walk by, some turning up their nose in a snobbery, like, get a job, you bum, or something. It's like, what job? What job? In this market? Look at how many jobs we're losing, right now. The economy is not doing very well. That's because of terrible governance from the federal level. But if we created the situation where, we're doing welfare and stewardship, there's many jobs that people could go out and do every single day. Pick up the slack where, there's not enough people over here. Maybe Jake would be willing to move to another city, do contract work for a little while to help them accomplish some work that needs to be done there. We got a couple neighborhoods that need, to get their houses worked on to help bring them up to climate resilience. You're willing to go do a job here for a few weeks, you'll be accommodated while you're here, provisioned, supported, come and help us do the work that's over here. There's so much potential to do that. Like, that's where I envision proper capitalism to take us, is like, we have an intention why we do what we do. And our economy is based off of economizing our means to provision, accommodate, support, and steward, and to achieve welfaring outcomes. And that's what it looks like, is making the city of cities and making it work so everybody lives a good life, and making sure that nobody gets left behind. And then other things that we can build up in there's like service housing for people who do service jobs that are just about, this is not the job I'm going to have forever, but this is where I am right now. And this type of housing is perfect for somebody in that type of position, because it helps them to not have to pay more of their pay into housing, so that they can make savings and help to level up their life, be able to afford some time to go to school to learn some new talents, improve their talents, and learn some new skills so they can go get a better job, you know? And there's always going to be more people coming in that can go and fill that service job, move into service housing, you know, when that person moves out. And so we're building these different levels up of life for people so that nobody gets left behind, and that nobody is degraded or diminished because they're in any role. Like, every role is important. It reminds me of the saying from Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. when he spoke about what's the blueprint of your life. He did a speech and he's talking to these students. He's like, it doesn't matter what you are. If you're a street sweeper, you'd be the best street sweeper ever. You do no small task done poorly. You do everything with just like the prestige and pride of a job well done. And when we have that type of work that we're doing, it doesn't matter what you do. Everything in your life is about leveling up at life. And we have space and accommodations for everybody to come in and level up in their lives. Service housing and lease housing, it could be included as part of a compensation package that we provide for people who are in what we call the workforce, you know, part of society, the labor force, where, you know, you work for labor wages, you know, instead of like getting a salary wage or something like that. But it's enough to say, like, we're going to help you because of the job that you're in to be able to level up, to get a better job, so that the people that are going to come behind you that haven't leveled up enough with experience have a place they can go and do a little bit of work, and then have the appropriate supports to be able to get to the point where they can level up to the next position and then the next position, like, and do the whole roundup all the way to the point where we can get people to become homeowners, literally level them up with the means to go through different types of, you know, housing and living situations and type of work that they do, that they can eventually level up to become, you know, homeowners. And then concept of a great hall. Every city needs to have a great hall, so you have social, cultural, civic, bartering and gathering places, so you can establish arts and roots and culture. Then we need to have holistic health hubs, so it's not just having, you know, hospitals and emergency rooms or, you know, walk-in clinics sort of thing, but just in entire accommodating spaces for people to be able to go to level up their health experience, so they can improve their health and their well-being in various ways, which includes, you know, diet and exercise, preventative measures, you know, most accommodating preventative measures, and then making sure that everybody has what they need in order to support them with any sort of illness or disease or disability, or any sort of emergency that comes up. And this also includes, you know, vision and dental and you know, maternity and these sorts of things. We need to have those types of health centers that are holistic health and well-being and accessible to everybody, and in such a way where, you know, you get the care that you need, and that care is accessible, and that it is affordable, and it is in such a way where your health is the outcome, that the only outcome is your health and your well-being. And that is what you work together with a healthcare plan with your provider, that you work together to find how to achieve holistic health for yourself. And then resource commons, storehouses, localized, so there's, you know, backup reserves for all of our resources throughout our communities. So in case something like a pandemic happens, or war breaks out, or, you know, there's some crazy natural disaster, we don't have to go without because a resource, you know, distribution, you know, chain has been broken somewhere. and we're left in want. No, we want for nothing. We have all of the things that we need, and we've provisioned ourselves in secure, localized, coherent, systems of providing those things for ourselves. And then having unity gardens, so we have coherent, congruent spaces where we can commune with nature and be a part of nature. So it's less the concrete jungle and more of this beautiful interrelationship between, naturescapes and beautiful architectures, so that we don't feel like we are separated from nature, but a part of it. And then rapid response operating bases and hubs for first responders, so that we have more capacity to make sure that we're kept safe in our cities. And when people know that you have first responders that are localized and that they're about working for the communities that they already live in, then you can feel safer about the type of help that is going to come when you call for it. And then my favorite one is Makers Malls. It's an opportunity to create lifelong education for all people. They're centers for learning, personal development, skill building. It's based off of tutoring, mentoring, and experiential learning. And so you really go in and you make a thing to learn about a concept, instead of reading everything out of a book and then applying it to, parrot information back on a test. It's hands-on tangibility learning, and you're learning it in such a way that you're learning with people of all ages, no grade, age group conforming, certain people go to certain, levels of grades or whatever. Everybody learns together, so that you have the young learning from the elders, and then the elders are passing their knowledge to the youth, and they're working together so they can share ideas with one another, so that we're all on the same page. It's like the best type of like internships or journeyman. Like, you have somebody that comes in as an apprentice and they learn from you through experience, but then your apprentice will teach you things because they're like, have you considered this new method that came out? I know you've been doing it for years, but this might be something different. And then you're always leveling up with your experience, and you're learning new things. You're like, you know what, I want to branch out and try something new. And you can do that without it being this entire life-altering process. Excuse me. So I envision Makers Malls to be centrally located in every city of cities, and they're accessible to people through, many different transportation networks, but, close enough, and enough of them are built close enough that they can accommodate all the people within a location. And the whole idea is to make it so that everybody can go there to learn at any point in time. And the whole idea is to level up your life through, gaining and attaining knowledge, and, curating your learning experience so that you can cultivate wisdoms. And the idea would be that you have everybody from, infants and child development all the way up to, old age. And you're learning different skills and different abilities and different talents. And the entire setup is not like, a school with little classrooms you go into. It's more like a mall that you walk into, and each one of the little stores is a different type of learning experience. You can go in there and learn different things. And with the exception of just a few things, like, you can't get too many steps ahead of something, there's nothing holding you back from learning anything that you are interested in. And opening that type of experience will be able to cultivate curiosity and creativity, and we'll get more people using the capacity for problem solving, which will help us establish better innovations that help to improve our city of cities and help to up-level people's lives so that more people live the good life. and that we can achieve that in a more efficient means. And if we're using that concept that our Maker's Mall is about helping us to be better welfaring stewards, and our whole idea is to achieve our welfaring mission, then we have a proper intended use behind our education as well. You can learn many different facets of approaching that, like arts and the humanities, super important. You need to have those, and you need to have soft skills. You need to know how to debate. You need to know how to critically think. You need to know how to write and read and do math and things like that. But you need to also know how to tinker and build things with your hands. You need all of these different capacities and to use them in different and various ways, so that you can apply that. But the whole point is like, how can I better develop myself to improve upon my human experience, my human capacities, so that I can be of better service to the world, because I know that I'm a steward trying to achieve welfaring stewardship along with everybody else in the criterion echelon of society. So that's the big overarching goal and vision that I see. And I really believe that America has the potential to achieve this. Because think of it right now, we have so much divisiveness amongst us because we have political parties trying to determine for us this is what's going to be important to us. This is what we're going to be about. This is what we're going to do. But that doesn't align with common mutual interests of everybody. They're literally factioning us and separating us, pitting us side against side. Nothing that they say is a common, cohesive, coherent, ideal that everybody would want to be involved with. And I think that that's the problem with political parties. They've just lost sight. It's like, government is not about politics. Political philosophy is necessary in order to be, a politician working in government. You need to be able to create policy, which is you have to understand a general framework of law and then have a basic understanding of the, inner workings of the systems that you're trying to create, laws to alter or change the outcomes for. So political philosophy is important, but ultimately it's about, solving for the intractability of problems, making sure that the, well-being of the people is achieved. In America, again, the tenets of the Constitution, and then making sure we're adhering to what our Declaration says. These are unalienable rights. Everybody gets this. And but instead, people have broken up into like culture wars of like, it's more important that we make sure, everybody stays away from woke concepts, whatever that means. Or, some little hot topic, hot button topic or whatever that will piss enough people off that we get to debate and argue about it. Debates are healthy and they're good when they're actually constructive, when it's like, the reason why we're having this conversation is because there's conflicting sides, differences of opinions. I see things differently than you do. I experience things differently than you do. I'm coming from a different place. How do we find out what those differences are so that we can have a basis of moving forward on this in a way where we can actually say, all right, we've solved for that, at least for now in the given context. But we're not working towards those sorts of things. Instead, it's just like terribly violent and cruel and, mean-spirited and nasty infighting with one another. And I'm just not about it. It's easy to get tangled up in those sorts of things, but it's not constructive in any way. What have we gotten out of this? I mean, just since the last inauguration, there's not been a lot of progress on doing good for the people in America. There's a lot of bad things that have been happening. A lot of people have been hurt. A lot of things that didn't need to happen are happening. Unnecessary harm, unnecessary suffering, necessary destruction, not, conscious or caring or considerate of anything that, people are doing. And a lot of people are struggling because of it, and they're living in fear. And it's like, that's no way to govern, and what even is their policy? Basically what it comes down to is that if you're not white, you're not male, and you're not rich, and a tech bro, you are going to be set at a disadvantage of society. We're going to erase you from all public spaces and all public narratives, and we're going to pit you side against side, because we're going to make the situation so desperate that there's not enough resources left for everyone. So then y'all are going to have to infight with one another, while the pockets of thriving of the deviant echelon of societies pooled all their resources, and they think they're going to be fine. They're intentionally trying to let the world go to shit so that they can let everybody else kill off each other, I guess, so that they can come in as the supreme ruling authority and make the world into their own image. They don't realize that that's not going to solve for their situation, because they're going to still have the problem of conflict, and it's going to be even worse, because it's like you're shrinking your pool to all of the people who have privilege deeply embedded in their entire world view and their existing paradigm that they live in, they base their reputation on, and their necessity on. And you're going to limit it down to that pool, and then you're going to have to, because that's the natural order of how you live in the world, there has to be some sort of subjected person, that is oppressed. So there's going to be somebody in that group that's going to start to be the subjected, oppressed ones. And then it's going to be even more deeper infighting. It's going to shrink the world even more and even more. And then it's going to just be a really bad outcome. I don't understand how they don't see that they're setting themselves up for failure in that way. It's very much the same concept as I see if you send a small group of people to go off planet to some other planet. It's not going to be very long before they're put into a desperation mode, and it's going to be, a dog eat dog, mighty crush the weak, free for all hellscape, which is exactly what we have, playing out in America right now. And there's always going to be somebody that's going to try to be a part of the deviant echelon that is going to try to, lower the standard, break down the standard, weaken the standard, because once the standard's weakened, it's easier to exploit them to get even more to the deviant echelon, and, so that they can have the means to turn the system in their own way. So that's what I want to remove from the scenario universe, and I want to focus on, let's build out for the criterion echelon of society and make it in such a situation that we can invite people from the deviant echelon in that says, listen, it really doesn't matter to you, some person perverted your worldview and made you think that you need, to get rid of women from positions of authority, or, people of color from a person of color from a position of authority, or erase history because it's considered woke or whatever. Like, those things actually never really mattered to you. It only mattered because they made it matter, because they needed you to be pissed off about something so you could be easily exploited, But when you come to a situation where it's like, listen, this is like for everybody and we don't discriminate here, so you're welcome to join us, sort of thing, then people will actually invite. And it's, again, not just saying that there aren't people from like the far reaches of the left, which are just insanely out of control in terms of like, I mean, how can you be such a hypocrite to say that you want to have, freedom and liberty in society, but you are outright saying that you need to remove all the rights from other people? Like, they may be doing the wrong thing right now, but it's not to say that you need to get rid of them completely and fight them and attack them and that's the only solution. It's like, no, literally build something that is so much better than what they're experiencing right now that they would just be willing to let go of all of that and join in on a collective, contributing, constructive project. That to me is the solution. So it's like getting people from all sides just calm the fuck down and just stop infighting with each other over stupid petty bullshit and come together on something that's actually reasonable, you know? And I know that there are going to be some things that are really tough issues that are hard to figure out. But once we have that firm basis that we're working on and we're trying to establish it and we do what we can in the small ways, eventually we'll have more means to focus on dealing with those larger problems because we've secured the situation enough where people aren't struggling just to survive. You know, things are about to get really, really hard. Like literally the POTUS 47 regime that is currently, you know, at the head of the federal government right now, and all its little subsidiary MAGA cohort people are making life terribly difficult in America. They are actually establishing a dog-eat-dog, mighty crush the weak, free-for-all hellscape. And they're about to make it even harder for everybody and more desperate for everybody. In the meantime, you know, they're making fun of the idea that their cruelty is, you know, it's literally like the concept of painfotainment. If you've ever seen the the hardcore history podcast, I highly suggest watching that particular one because it kind of puts into context of like why what the MAGA cohort's doing right now seems to be such fun for them. You know, they actually like the fact that they get to fuck with everybody and harm people intentionally and be cruel and inhumane because it's literally entertainment to them, to the point where they're like plastering videos of, you know, human rights violations like it's a funny little skit or something like that. Like, isn't it great that we're able to do this stuff and get away with it? Because who's going to hold America accountable to it, you know? And all the people in positions of authority in America, you know, are all in on it. So of course, you know, nobody's going to, you know, stop it from happening. And it's like inhumane cruelty. It's wrong. But it doesn't have to be that way, and it can change once we just stop feeding into it and involving with it and stop giving your attention to the outrage machine and instead be like, all right, guys, this is what we're working on today that's building out a better world that makes their world obsolete. Because when we're focused on building up, you know, support systems for the criterion echelon, the deviant echelon shrinks. And not just because some of them will naturally come over because it's like, wow, I don't want to be a part of that because it's actually terribly evil and cruel and that's not my human nature. But also it's like less and less opportunities to exploit people, and then they're going to find, oh wow, you know, my way of life actually is diminishing, and they're going to either turn on each other and infight, or they're going to, you know, turn outwards and be like, what else is there? And then we welcome them into a situation they can thrive on and be like, well, you could just stop being an asshole and start doing things that are good. And, you know, we know that you have capacities, you got talents, you got skills, use them for forces for good instead of bad, you know. And then we have to go through the situation of like not, you know, fighting them and saying, fuck you, you were a piece of shit and you did this wrong thing, shame on you, blah, blah, blah. We have to be like, once you're in it and you're a part of the criterion echelon and you're helping us build this and you're a welfaring steward too, that's all we need, you know? We're not here to shame you or blame you or hold you down, you know? Like literally we're here about redemption and reconciliation. And yeah, there's going to be some things that people have done wrong that really just need to have consequences for them. But as we build up the means to provision for the criterion echelon, we also build up the structures for corrective mechanisms that help to make these people go through a corrective process so that they can redeem themselves. and reintegrate back into society by their own choice, by their own free will, and also by their own application. You know, they have to take extreme ownership for their actions and their consequences in the aftermath of their choices, but do so in a way instead of it being like diminishing and in, you know, shaming somebody, you know, and like make them think they're in damnation, but rather like elevating and empowering and enriching. It's like, you got this, I'm so proud of you. It's just like an addict. You don't attack them and tell them what a piece of shit they are every single day. You know, you're only on day 72 of your recovery, you're a piece of shit. No, you're like 72 days of recovery. Man, that's incredible. You know, keep going, I'm so proud of you, because that's what gets them to recover. You know, you have to be enthusiastic and you have to champion for their success and good outcomes for them and invite them into that situation so that they don't have any cause or reason to revert back into this negative, you know, conflicting cycle of, you know, being a bad actor with nefarious intent, you know, living out in bad behavior that results in terrible outcomes for themselves and for others. Because, I mean, imagine how terribly wrenching it must be for their souls when they have moments of personal revelation that comes up and says, you know, you're doing the wrong thing. You know, however they justify it in their head to sweep it away, that make it seem like this is the right thing, like justifying, you know, sending children away to a foreign country they've never been into before. You know, they're justifying because that's an immigrant and they're evil and they're criminals and everything. They justify that in their head, but it's like, okay, you know, if this was your child, would you want your child to go through that? Hell no, you wouldn't. You know, so what makes it right that you do that to another child? Because they don't have the status you think that they need to have. You know, it's far better to adopt new interpretations of the law that make it so that these people have the legitimate means to fully integrate into society than it is to say some weird interpretation of some, you know, ancient wartime law gives me justification to treat you in an inhumane way and strip you of your human rights and human dignities and all this stuff, you know, and violate you and send you off to no man's land to, basically conduct human trafficking. It's terrible. Like, there has to be some sort of heart-wrenching part of these people that they're experiencing, you know, that keeps them awake at night or something. And that's the part where the light, you know, can hopefully get in to help them to come back into a sense of having a conscience, you know, and to become more reasonable about it and look things in a different way, instead of what, you know, the MAGA cohort's trying to make you think, you know, we're doing the right thing, getting all these criminals out. Instead, be like, wow, we have fellow human beings that are in a really tough situation, and, you know, they're really needing to get the right type of guidance and support and whatnot. And if we could just help welcome them back into a situation that they can thrive on, they could be assets to us, you know, and help us to achieve our greater goals of achieving, you know, this imperishable world peace together. Like, these could be allies and assets, and this is human ingenuity, a vast potential, you know, untapped potential in these people that we could help to bring out and have them work together with us to apply towards the things that we need to do. Like, let's look at them in terms of the potential that they have, instead of this idea that they are, you know, these property or possessions and you know, these objects that we can just treat however we want and disregard them. I literally am like worried about the souls of the people who are justifying this terribly god-awful, inhumane, unlawful actions. Like, those people on their personal day of revelation, even if they just have, you know, hints of revelation that come up here and there that are like, you're doing the wrong thing, this bad, wrong thing, they're going to still come into a personal day revelation where it's all going to hit them, and they're going to have to come face to face with all of the things that they're doing that it goes against good humanity, and they're going to have to somehow reconcile that. And I really fear for them that they're going to suffer so immensely that they're not going to be able to endure. And I don't want that for them at all. I really just wish they would stop, suffering themselves and others for things that really don't matter. And, the grand scheme of things, the little bit of joy that they might get out of, forcing somebody else to suffer, like, that is nothing. It literally is just invaluable. Like, it has no value at all compared to the invaluable, like, priceless sense of pure joy of knowing that you are just doing good humanity. You're doing the right thing, and you don't have to question it. That's what I wish for everybody. And it's not just to say, like, the MAGA cohort are, the only ones that do things that are wrong or bad. There are plenty of people on the fringe far left extremes that do things that I am not okay with. I'm not okay with breaking shit, vandalizing stuff, and doing violence against, people or property or whatever to make a point. Like, I understand you're angry, you're frustrated, channel and funnel that towards something constructive instead of destructive, and I know it probably feels good that you're like, POTUS 47's a piece of shit in this way and all this other stuff. It's like, yeah, sure, we all know, we are all watching, and we're seeing he's doing these terrible, god-awful things. He has a very blackened, black hole for a soul, and it's, causing a lot of harm for people. But again, you're feeding your energy into him, and that's what he likes, is the attention. Like, he doesn't care if it's good or bad. And that's not constructing something that's going to change the situation, where he's going to have to start doing things a different way that is, actually good outcomes. You are actually enabling him to continue to do bad, because, by just saying he's a bad person, you're justifying him to continue to be a bad person. It's okay to say you're doing this wrong, and then guide him, or, enforce him to go in a certain direction to set things right. But just to do outright, violence or something like that in protest is not my bag either. I'm not about that kind of stuff. I want us to all be able to find a common ground with one another and heal from this, terrible situation that we're in. Be able to identify a true American identity that everybody, wants to be a part of, can be a part of, and do so in such a way where, nobody has to feel like, they can't come as they are. And I know that there's potential for this, so much potential, and I see it, and I just keep reiterating it, phrasing it as best I can, expressing it as best I can. But I know words only go so far. It's action that makes the difference, and I'm all about getting that done. I just really need the right type of people to surround myself with, to be involved with, to start building these things together, because I only have so much capacity. But I really do need to have the right type of people by my side. I've been looking for people that are willing to build up the various different innovations that are necessary in order for this to actually work. But it's difficult. It's really hard to find people that are willing to, involve with something, because there's so many different opportunities everywhere. And how do you convince somebody to start something that's like, kind of seems, that's impossible. World peace? Yeah, I actually really do believe that it's possible, and I know it is, and I've worked on it. And there's various different components to it, certainly, but it's things that I can't do alone. I need more people, and more people joining with me and voice raised up will be able to help to accomplish it more. And it's great because I hear so many people saying they want change and they're excited and we should do all these things. And I just keep being like, yeah, well, that's exactly what, welfare and stewardship is going to be able to accomplish. But it's going to do it in such a way that also includes all this other really awesome stuff, like let's be about that. That's just really what I want to see be brought out in the world. And I really hope to be able to find the right type of people that are willing to, help out in contribution, not just in a sense of, oh, that's a great idea, let me share it or whatever. Like, I want to be able to engage in conversations with people about like what they think is possible in terms of like just these basic parameters that I've offered and set, and then where they see that there's barriers in this way. This might make it harder to do. Here's the challenge, help us identify the challenge so we can work on it together. And then the voices of reason, like the people who are actually in positions of power right now, decision making, that are wanting to do something different than what is being, put forth and advanced by the POTUS 47 regime. You're desperate to change the system or whatever, like, political leaders that are from the Democratic Party, they have absolutely no sense of where they're going or guidance. Like, I'm not trying to say that they need to take this on as their platform, because I really think it would take a revolutionary shift for them to be able to do that. But it very much aligns with what the core principles of, democracy is about. So I think they could get behind it. But a lot of those type of leaders that I've been listening to, it resonates with them in terms of like the things they want to do in these different ways and the projects they're doing in their own senses. And we could collaborate and work together to build up, a coalition of people that are working on this together, instead of like doing a bunch of rallies where you're bringing 22,000 people to some area to listen to you say, fuck the oligarchy. Okay, yeah, nice, but so what does that mean? How does that actually practically apply in action, in tangible terms? I want to be an agent for change, and I need to have resource so that I can affect that change. And, I need to have a mission, an objective or whatever. Like, that's what I'm looking for. Give that to 22,000 people and let them go out and get it done is far more better than just having them all stand there, looking at somebody on a podium saying the same thing over and over again. Like, we need to work on getting stuff done. And I could see myself having conversations with these people and saying, okay, when you go into these cities, these are the template frameworks that you need to, get people to go and do, and not just, knocking on a door and handing out a flyer that says, vote for me, or, give my political party money or whatever. It's like, no, we need a group of people that can go out on this day to accomplish this task and get this done. Who's going to be about it? All right, thanks. And then use your podium and your platform to actually affect change. Get people not just to rally, around, some idea or whatever, but to like really become an agent for change, act upon those convictions that they have, that it's like, we're not okay with things the way that they are. And we see that they're making things worse for us. The criterion echelon is being subjected by the deviant echelon, which the POTUS 47 regime is very much the deviant echelon of society. They're so completely selfish, So we need to do something where they are not harming us further, and we are actually helping ourselves, instead of constantly trying to hurt them or hinder them or, halt their progress or whatever. We need to do that to an extent so they don't get completely out of hand, absolutely. But we also need to help ourselves and focus on building those sorts of things. Otherwise, they're going to continue to just siphon as much as they possibly can for us. We have to anticipate that they're not going to give a flying fuck about us or do anything for us. Theirs is a type of government that does to you, not for you. And so we need to become we do what needs to be done for you to help you to live the good life. It's the thing that I always fall back on, is like, in the process of making America great, it's going to fail to do good. And so we have to step up and do the good thing. And then having conversations with people, like, obviously I can go on about this forever. I've already done it for quite a long time, so I'll wrap it up. But I need to have that dialogue with somebody. I would like to be able to have, like public interview and podcast type conversations with people, because I want to be questioned on things and challenged on my ideas so that I can have that debate, so other people know that it's like, oh, others are considering this too. And then that in that dialogue space is where we make the connections for others, because it's not just one person talking about it. It's not just one person that has the idea. It's multiple people that have the idea. And not in a sense of like, taking the information and then I'm reporting about it in the media to skew the view whatever way, that they need it to be, or having, private back-ended conversations about it and mocking it or whatever, or finding ways to undermine it. Like, no, like public debate, out in the open where people are like, all right, what do you have as an idea? I have this as an idea. Let's come together and see what is feasible. It does have opportunity. Because I think that more people are going to understand what I'm about and what I'm trying to accomplish when that dialogue starts. And then they'll take me more seriously, so that those leaders that are, saying, guys, we got to do a thing. All right. Yeah. And then people break away from that rally and then they go home and they don't do anything but make another poster for the next time they're going to go out and rally against some other concept or ideas. Like building stuff, we need to apply ourselves, be productive, and constructive, not just, act upon these sorts of things. So, and that's what it's going to take in terms of networking and bringing people together. And I'm hoping to be able to find ways to actually connect with people that will be able to make that real world tangible change. The biggest thing is really trying to find the people who want to be in the like founders type situation with this, the ones who want to be come in and do exactly like the founders of the United States did. I've made great strides in terms of the framework for all of this. I have business plans and I have entire thesis and manifestos and all of these things, and precise contracts in terms of like what projects are going to get done and how they get accomplished and what their outcomes are supposed to be. But I'm wanting to get other people's words, views, perspectives, actually cultivating and creating a written framework for establishing a fourth branch of government for civics, and then writing out how through the civics branch we actually go through and implementing the types of like self-governance and then community governance, so that we can work together to get more things done. But put it into such a way that more people can become involved with it and feel like they're a part of it in a way that is not like only for certain people of certain age groups or certain ethnicities or something like that. I want people of all ages to be involved in it and working together, just like with the Maker's Mold. I want the youth learning from, the elders, and the elders learning from the youth, and everybody in between, figuring out together what's the right type of language and wording that we can use to craft the right types of laws that give us the guidance and understanding, so that we can enter these situations and start working on it. We're giving ourselves the rules and the goals and the parameters by which we're going to stay in accordance with. But we are determining those things ourselves mutually together, not just one person doing it. It's where I feel like this is a little bit off for me, because of the fact that like I'm saying literally I can't, but we can, but there's not enough of the we in the situation. And so I feel a little stuck because of that. But I don't know quite how to break through the noise that is out there in society. I had somebody give me great constructive feedback the other day. It's like, I don't want to watch your long ass video. I just want you to tell me the short and sweet of it or whatever. And it's like, I get that. I totally respect that. And I have the short and the sweet. That's what I did in my little breakup thing of, the different intents and the angles and things like that. But the point is not just to say this is the thing. I have to add context, give you the storylines that you can fathom, like, well, how will that practically apply? Why is that reasonable? Why does it matter? And that takes time to be able to explain to people. And I understand people don't have a whole bunch of time to listen to it, but like, you have to be able to spend time in order to know whether or not it's something that you can actually get behind. And if you're not willing to spend the time, then what's the point? It's like you invest a little bit of time here to rather than doing an expedient fix, give it to me right now, which doesn't take into consideration all the variables of consequence in the scenario universe. You may make a wrong decision because you don't have enough information. I'm trying to give you enough information that you understand it, so that you know what you're getting involved with, and so you can see where you can be of service in it. That's what's important to me. It's like everybody has their own skills and talents. Mine are very different than, my skill set, and my understanding of the world is very different from everyone else's. But that's why we need each other, and then work together to make a cohesive, bigger picture of this is what we can all do together, how we can all see this working out, and doing our own parts in our own ways to make it real and tangible. I think that's what, we would do so much better as a nation if we had a president that had that sense of, vision. This is what I want to accomplish. I want us to have this identity. I want us to go about doing things this way, and these are the type of outcomes we want to achieve, and I want all of you to be involved. So bring your ideas. What do you got? What do you have that you think you can do best for you, that is also going to help and be in service to others, that's going to help us all collectively achieve that grand vision, and let's, bring that together into this vast synthesis and achieve it as, a unit together. Far better than what we're experiencing right now with the POTUS 47 regime, where it's literally like all the pricks and the bullies are imposing their will upon the rest of us, while they're, corrupting the systems so that they game the systems entirely into their favor. In the meantime, they're harming people, and they're finding joy and happiness in causing harm to people that's unnecessary harm. And then, stripping people of their rights and their dignities and their support systems, all in the name of saving a little bit of money. But this is the thing about money, right? Why we have a deficit is because we spend all this money on accomplishing things, but the things that we accomplish don't necessarily have a return on investment that helps us to make gains on the productivity that we're able to make in the future, now that we've done this investment now, so that in the future we're making more in gains so that we can pay back everything that we had to spend now. That's called investment. And it's paying forward to our future selves the opportunity to make more out of the potential that's there, give us more capacity to do more, so that productivity level is increased so much that we have enough to pay back the things that we had to, infuse investment into earlier on. That's how we shrink the deficits. We invest in things that help us to be more productive in the future, so that we can pay back the things that we've had to pay for now, and then make it so that we have to do less of the, large investment to get more productivity in the future. Instead, get to the point where we do, a little bit of investment here, and then we get a return on investment in a short amount of time, shortening the distance between investment and return on investment, and then making sure the return on investment is amplified in such a way where it doesn't necessarily have to be we get more money out of it, but we get more value, and the value being the energy unit metric rather than dollars. Then it's based off of outcomes. It's like our whole point isn't that we need more money so we can spend more money, because that's the system that they're working off of right now and have been for a long time. No, we need more capacity to be more productive so that we can increase more capacity, so we can achieve more of the outcomes that help us to achieve welfare and stewardship. We want the outcomes that help us to live the good life. That's what we should be about. And then the more capacity that we have and the better outcomes that we have that achieve these things, the less that we have to spend on, the piecemeal solutions that we've been doing over time. All that stuff goes away. But not because we just stop having those programs and cut them off, cutting everybody off at the kneecaps or something like that. And it's like, fend for yourself. No, we've built up the systems and help make sure that everybody has what they actually need out of that system. And the system that was too, dysfunctional or, inefficient or whatever, no longer has to operate because we have this better system that has made that old one obsolete. But we don't leave anybody without. We build this new system and phase out the old one in such a way where nobody gets left behind, nobody gets harmed, because we have to uphold our integrity and dignity and self-respect when we do these things. We have to be able to say that the method that we used actually justifies, the end result that we got. And we can't do that with the way things are happening right now, especially where it's like we're just going to destroy and ruin everything, and then once we've burnt it all to the ground, then we can build it back up however, they deem that it's effective. But let's just look at it like the people in the Silicon Valley type people that are trying to rebuild the nation and their image or whatever. They don't know how to solve problems. They know how to, create problems and then create solutions for that problem, but they don't know how to actually change the world for the better. They know how to make shit worse and then make it appear like things are better because they've created a problem so they can create a solution, so they entangle people into a consumer trap. It's kind of like creating a poisoning everybody, and then saying, I'm the only one that has the antidote, and then selling it off to everybody. It's like you create the problem so that, you are the only one that has the solution so that you can game a system that is ever in your favor, and that's wrong. That's what they're trying to do with government, is literally what they're doing with government. With all of those people getting their, hands in systems and contracts and everything all into their favor. Yeah, it's a rigged system of corruption and it's bullshit. But none of those things are going to derive outcomes that are going to result in good outcomes for anybody else in society, But that system doesn't have to be that way. That system can change, and it needs to change. And I'm hoping that there's a way to do so in such a way that can help us shorten the timeline for what we have to endure with this current president. I would like to get us into a position where we build the means for us to have a fourth branch of government that will help us to actually remove everybody that has been involved in this corrupt, regime, to be removed from office and then replaced, but do so before we have to wait for another election, because what they're doing right now is effectively treason, because it's going completely against our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. And I don't want it to be, treason, bad people, prison for life. I'm not interested in sending these people to El Salvador, but removing them from positions of power so that they're not able to do harm anymore. Replace them with people, able-bodied, capable people who are, determined that we're going to make America work for everybody without the disadvantage of anybody, so nobody gets left behind, into positions of government, recorrect the ship of state, and set the course for that imperishable, world peace that we're on continuum to try to achieve. And then place these people who have committed treason against America into a corrective mechanism to help them reintegrate back into society and, face the consequences of their actions and take extreme ownership for it. And then, be reconciled and redeemed and come back into society in such a way where, they understand that, that wasn't right, got a little carried away, now you got to start doing the right thing, And that's that's the Disney-fied version of it in terms of like what would actually how come. I don't anticipate that these people would go quietly. But I don't think that it has to be like super extreme. And I think that if it is going to be escalated, it's going to be from their end. And that's why we have to take appropriate measures now to defend ourselves against that escalation, that they are really rigging the system into their favor. And the whole idea is like, we need to make sure that we're the peaceful side, but anticipate that these people are already very violent, and they're going to be put into a corner of desperation that's literally, challenging, the situation that they've staged and set up for themselves to favor them. They're going to hold on to that. This is the thing they've staked their livelihoods on, their reputation on, and they're going to fight for it. And we have to understand that they've already proven themselves capable of doing evil, and with ease, and that it is a natural thing for them to do that because they have no conscience for any wrongdoings. And so we have to be able to shine that light of conscience for them, make them experience as often as possible personal revelations, so it becomes increasingly difficult for them to tune out their conscience, and just make it very difficult for them to live the way that they do, and then eventually it'll help to settle them down. But we have to be willing to stand our ground and to defend ourselves and preserve, protect, and defend, our nation and what it stands for, and make sure that it's not going to be taken away from us and be brought back into tyranny as it once was before. Like right now is a calling to ourselves and each other to do what is necessary in order to make sure that our nation is a place worth defending, and defend it from enemies, both foreign and domestic. With that, I appreciate your valuable time, attention, consideration. If you're interested in learning more, having a conversation with me, working together on some collaboration, if you have different insights or suggestions of different concepts that I might need to look at that could be in relationship to what I've been discussing, I'm grateful to receive those things. There's a comment section in the video, so I'm sure you can add something in there and I will look it up and can be contacted in that way. I will eventually create a communication channel specifically for people to get a hold of me through like an email or something like that. I'm not doing that right now because I'm just not in the place where that's where I'm looking to do. I have an email and contact information that I give to certain people that I meet, but I'm not ready to just pass that out onto the internet for just any old person to be able to see for right now. My hope and my intention, what I'm actually really, all about working on right now, is I want to work with this company to be able to build a web page where I can condense all this information and just leave it there for people to be able to see, and then have a contact through that people can reach out, and then they can offer suggestions and things like that. So you get more information in a condensed way, kind of like that guy that gave me the critical feedback, said, you can do all of that in 15 minutes and save me all my life and time. Totally understand. Time is precious. But again, I am trying to make sure people understand my character and they understand where I'm coming from. And so it takes time and sharing that with everybody so that they can get a feel for what I'm all about. But working on that webpage is really the next critical step, because it is going to be the most direct, condensed content information that can be received for people, and then a direct line of communication with me so I can start establishing those network effect with other people. So that's what I'm focusing on for right now. But in the meantime, again, if you have any comments to leave or questions to ask, leave them in the comments. Again, I'm grateful for your valuable time and attention. Until next time, I appreciate you. Be well.